Hello, everyone. Sorry. Good morning, good afternoon, and now happy that you're watching. Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Morning.
Good morning for you, and good afternoon for Steven. Thank you for joining also as my co-host. Why my co-host? Because I'm in a place that the connection is not that good. So hopefully it will last. But if not, then Steven can also host. So I'm happy that you are also joining. And
Yes.
yeah, you see it already in the screen below. We're gonna talk about the Super 6 topics to learn or master, whatever you want to name it, Power BI. And in a second we'll be discussing that. But if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments. Whether you're watching via YouTube or LinkedIn, both are okay. And Paul already says hello. So hello.
Morning, Paul. Great seeing you.
Yeah. So if you want to follow us, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel or our LinkedIn channel. That's all both possible. If you like this video, then don't forget to do the thumbs up. And if you want to know more about Power BI and related solutions, then try our demo for Power Up. That's our online learning platform. But we're very happy that you're watching, and hopefully yeah, you can ask some questions because we can discuss together what the Super 6 is. And yeah, let's get started with today's episode. So Ronald is also watching. He's a big fan of your work, he says. And Michael is also watching from our own team. So that's nice. Brian, before we start, yeah, I think a lot of people already know you, but for the people that don't know you, can you share us a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so currently I'm on kind of an interesting little bit of an interesting journey that I'm on sabbatical at the moment. For the last position I had was I worked for about 3 years for Enterprise DNA as their chief content officer. So working very closely with founder Sam Mackay. And we really focused on, originally it was focused on, training and teaching just Power BI, but then we expanded pretty dramatically into kind of all aspects of data analysis and the modern data stack. So we had Excel, we had SQL, we had Power BI, we had R, Python, and really kind of tried to be kind of a one-stop shop for data analysis. And so I did that for a number of years, and then took a bit of a break after at the end of the summer. And I've just been really focused on writing and doing some coaching and mentoring, and then also some kind of assorted projects, some things that I just feel strongly about that I really support and believe in. So I've been dedicating some time to those, but a lot of it is really just kind of being out in the community, and particularly the LinkedIn community that I really enjoy, and trying to share and learn and interact with folks in the community. And that's a lot of what I spend time on for this time.
But I think a lot of people appreciate it that you share so much knowledge and insights on LinkedIn. I certainly do. That's how I came across you also, and Steven also, I think.
Yeah.
Because
you didn't take a sabbatical from content creation, I think.
No.
Pardon?
You didn't take a sabbatical from content creation, Steven says.
No. That's actually something. Even it's funny because when I'm on vacation or something and I don't post for a couple of days, I really miss it. That it just it's a rhythm I've gotten into, and I think last year I posted 328 of the 365 days.
Wow.
So, it's something I really enjoy.
How many people are viewing your content approximately?
I think last year in 2023, I had close to 8 million views.
Wow. That's a lot.
And the interesting thing we'll talk about is that Super 6 was about 10% of them. That one post was 10% of the views for the year, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. So that's a nice bridge, Brian. Thank you for that. So let's dive into that because what was your reason behind writing this article about the Super 6? What was the background of that?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That it was an interesting set of circumstances that kind of sparked that. So that if we look kind of on screen, you know, that the first thing I wanted to zoom in on was kind of a series of posts, and this is not one of the posts. This is Alexis Veris, and this is quite a good article actually on how to become a data scientist. But I saw a lot of these types of posts on LinkedIn with just crazily unrealistic timelines. You know, where basically people were saying, you know, 30 days to become a data scientist, and you know, I was like, that's absurd. And then when I saw like 3 days for Power BI, you know, I thought, you know, there's no way you can even begin to scratch the surface of Power BI in 3 days. But then what I also saw was, you know, I saw a number of things. One of which was, you know, a series of polls like this one, which is, you know, which language is the Power BI champ? And overwhelmingly, people say DAX. And interestingly, you can see I'm in the 4% that didn't, you know, that said M in this one. And what I saw at the same time was I was talking a lot to Carlos Barboza, and he posted this meme. And there's a couple of things. It's funny, but the other thing about it is it got almost 1,000 likes. And
wow,
this post that I'm going to talk about today is the only post I've been posting for 2.5 years. That's the only post that ever of mine has more than 1,000 likes. And the fact that resonated so much with this particular meme, I said, there's something really there, you know. And particularly having spent that 3 years with Enterprise DNA and talking to folks about their learning process and everything, I really saw, you know, one of the stumbling blocks that most people talk about is DAX. And so kind of between the two of these, I thought, okay, you've got on one side, you've got people kind of unrealistically saying you can learn Power BI right away. And on the other, you've got people saying, you know, DAX is just a huge problem and a huge hurdle for them. And so, you know, I thought about my own learning journey, and I think it was very similar to, I think, the way, you know, most people learned, which is, you know, I came to Power BI, immediately jumped in learning DAX, and, you know, really deep into DAX. And then it was only later that I realized maybe that's not the most efficient way. And so as I was thinking about all these things, I thought, you know, let me, you know, kind of take the benefit of my, you know, time with Power BI, and particularly the 3 years, you know, focused on teaching and learning, and distill down kind of what, if I were to go back and start over learning Power BI, how would I do it? And I really thought there were 6 things that were just totally transformational for me. And I didn't do them at all in the proper order. I didn't do them in the right magnitude. I didn't study them in the right ways, you know, when I first started. But looking back,
with hindsight, yeah. In hindsight, right?
All over again.
Yeah.
That I could really,
before we go into that, Brian, I would also like to ask the people that are watching, and you see this below in the screen, menti.com, and if you enter this code, we are very curious to hear from you. What is your biggest challenge? What's your superpower? Maybe that you, in hindsight, also maybe let us know, because we'll share that with each other. And I see already some people are sharing it. I see already some people, the largest challenge indeed DAX, confirming that. So now maybe in a minute we can also talk about a little bit visual calculations. But let's first go into the Super 6. Maybe it will be 7. I don't know. I'm curious to hear that from Brian.
Well, and
but let's that
is definitely something I wanted to, you know, talk about here, is that, you know, interestingly, I think the landscape has changed since I did this post in 2 really significant ways. I think one of them is AI. You know, that AI has become such a bigger player in all this, and in both learning and in implementation. And also, you know, just this week, visual calculations, I think are going to have a huge impact on the way people learn and how they learn and the focus of their learning and how they implement DAX. So, definitely want to talk about that. And
maybe that's number 7. Yeah. But let's go. I get your screen again. So let's go to number 1.
Yeah. So number one is, building the Star Schema. And, so what I wanted before I get in that, as I was putting this talk together, I really wanted for the folks who, participate in this discussion, really wanted to have something for you to take away. And so I've talked a lot about Obsidian and kind of how I do personal knowledge management and the reasons I like this so much in terms of being able to put together something in markup language. And so what I've done is I put together kind of this basically a modern version, kind of an updated version of this post in Obsidian in markup that I can then basically distribute to everybody, on the call, after on the seminar afterwards. And so you'll have kind of a version, kind of full hyperlinked version of this, this post or this, this talk, to kind of use as a basis for, your own learning and study. So, I just wanted to, kind of that's, as I was putting this together, that's kind of the thing I had in mind to, kind of make a focus of this as well.
Yeah. So you included already some links I see, so people can, some of them maybe you will touch upon, some other people can watch themselves. So that's nice. But why is this on number 1 for you?
So number 1, really, that, as I say, when I first started with Power BI, I jumped right into DAX, and I really thought that the people who were expert at Power BI were the people who could write the most complex DAX, and that's kind of what I focused on. And as over time, what I realized is, I think the most expert people are the ones who write the least amount of DAX necessary to produce a really great report. And the way I saw them doing that was by really focusing on data modeling and, really making sure that you understand the fundamentals of Star Schema, that you can take a flat file, data set and break it down into a dimensional model, that you've got it, all kind of flowing, downhill from the dimensions to the fact tables, that you've got everything in one-to-many relationships. And the more I focused on that and the more I dug in that, the more simple my DAX became, the less DAX I wrote, the clearer my reports were, the faster they ran. And so, I think the first thing I would, tell anybody who, is either starting or is having trouble with their reports is to really go back and kind of do a kind of a deep dive back into the data modeling. And what I've got here is, we can actually I don't want to mess up my other screen here, but what I've got is I've got a series of resources, and I've got books that I recommend, but also I've got online resources, people to follow, and there's some great discussion that we've had in terms of topics that, even once you've kind of mastered the basic Star Schema, other things to dive into that'll really kind of boost your Power BI.
Do you see in practice that people maybe forget this step because they try to solve it indeed with DAX maybe? But sometimes it's very hard to make a spaghetti model into a nice Star Schema, right? Stefan also has, I know, some experience in that for a large client of his, right?
Yeah.
It took you quite some time, Stefan, to
it did. Yeah.
Untangle the spaghetti.
Yeah. Untangle spaghetti, split facts and dimensions from each other and such. And I relate to this item being very important.
And Stephen, did you find
kind of a huge impact on performance?
When you get those spaghetti models, that it's really worth the time to dig in and kind of get those straightened out from the start rather than trying to correct through DAX?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, like you said, with an easier, proper star schema, the DAX itself is a lot easier and a lot less complex and less prone for faults.
Yeah.
Now, Larry is thanking you for all the book tips, so people can look it up. Nothing wrong with some nice books. So I think that everyone probably will also recognize this one. Let's also looking at the time. Oh yeah, you have some additional ChatGPT. Oh yeah, can you tell a little bit about that, and then we go to the number 2. Yeah,
we can go back to some, but basically one of the things that I hear a lot, both in terms of DAX and data modeling, is that ChatGPT isn't good at either of those things. And I think that's really incorrect. And basically, none of us are any good at DAX or data modeling if we don't have the information on the data model. And just like, if I were to ask, your opinion or anybody's opinion as to how should I write my DAX, the first thing you're going to ask me is, well, what's your data model look like? And ChatGPT is exactly the same way. And the way you inform ChatGPT of your data model is by feeding it the BIM file. And we can go back later and talk about kind of how to do that. I've got a link here. I've talked about that in my content, but when you're working with ChatGPT on either DAX or data modeling, make sure you're giving to an expert or a consultant or someone you were collaborating with, to make sure it's got the same information that you would need. So the second thing was, and I've got the official Johnny Winter Roche's Maxim sweatshirt on today, but really learning and applying Roche's Maxim, and it's quite simple. And there's a great video that I've linked to from Guy in a Cube. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long. It's Matthew and Patrick just talking about Roche's Maxim and where it came from. And the idea is to push everything as close to the source as you can, but bring it as far down as you need to. And what they mean by that is you want to go either through Power Query, or even if you have access to the source, even potentially SQL. And instead of doing things in DAX that are not dynamic within the context of a reporting session, you want to push those up and really kind of limit your DAX to the things that need to be close to the user that are dynamic in that reporting session. And the interesting thing about this is I know like Chris Wagner is on a kind of a mission to basically say we shouldn't be doing calculated columns, and I agree with him that in almost every case there are some exceptions, but in the vast majority of cases, calculated columns are really something that should be closer to the source, either through SQL or through Power Query. And if you move those up and you move your calculated tables up, again, your report gets simpler, your DAX gets simpler. And so this one kind of goes part and parcel with the first one on data modeling. And I'll also point you to a terrific article by Rick de Groot about, kind of learning Power Query and M versus learning SQL. And he really says it's not a this or that, it's really a both. And there's some really good reasons why you want to have the flexibility in terms of in some cases you don't have access to directly to the source. In some cases you want to do kind of quicker prototyping, and so highly recommend.
Do you think, Brian, that people should learn a little bit about N? Because I don't think that a lot of people use N that create Power BI dashboards, do they? Or we have a different view?
No, that is, I absolutely believe, and that's the next thing I'm gonna talk about is I think M is one of the most powerful and kind of transformative things for my and let me zoom this one in, because this is This is a graphic from Gil Reviv's book, Collect, Combine, and Transform Your Data with Power Query. And for those of you not familiar with Gil, he was one of the original project managers on getting Power Query into Excel, and then kind of making Power Query what it is today. And one of the things that he talks about a lot in the book is that, first of all, I think the Power Query user interface is brilliant. It's one of those things that I think works beautifully for beginners, but it also works really well for experts. And you can do so much with it. And his point is that you can solve about half of your data problems in Power Query with just the UI.
But I missed the undo button.
Pardon?
I missed the undo button.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Me too.
But there actually are some nice ways you can bookmark, using the duplicate function. Yeah. So even when I'm writing M, I'll bookmark instead. Most of the time I reference from a structural standpoint, but from a coding standpoint, that duplicate function is really great for bookmarking. And so what Gil talks about in the book is that by just advancing a little bit into M, you can get up to from about 50% to about two-thirds of your problems with just some lightweight editing of M in the formula bar. You can take the M code that's generated automatically and then modify that on your own and get really pretty far. And then if you go a little bit further and be able to write M in custom columns, again, kind of initiated through the user interface, then you're up over 80%. And it's really that is not a heavy lift, I think, from a learning standpoint, to get to that level. I think most, Power BI users, particularly if you're a Python coder or you're used to writing SQL, I think that's going to be a pretty easy lift to get to that M in custom columns. And that puts you over 80% right there. And so from there the curve is a little bit steeper, and I think for many people that might be as much M as they want or need. But that small investment for me was a massive return. And what I did was, I kind of, last year was kind of the year of M for me. I decided that was kind of one of my key learning goals. And so what I did is, if we scroll down here, there are 4 regular Power Query M challenges on LinkedIn at all different levels of difficulty. And so, Oz de Soleil does a great one regularly as part of the LinkedIn Learning program. Crispa Mwangi has started doing one weekly on the weekends. That is probably, I would say, Oz's is the best entry level one. If you're not real comfortable in Power Query.
But these are challenges. You mean that they ask questions and you need to solve them? Is that what it is? Or
yeah. And so
cool.
What they do is they give you a scenario and they give you the data, and then they tell you kind of what you need to do to solve it. And we can jump in and take a look at some of these.
I look a little bit at the time, so let's move ahead to number 3 soon.
Okay.
But what I'm gonna try, I was just thinking, these are so nice links, but people probably want to click them. So I'm gonna try this for ChatGPT Vision, where you can go from image to text. And let's see if that works, if you can derive then the links, and I will add them then to the YouTube, to the description in YouTube. So if you want to know all these links, I'm gonna, if I may, Ryan,
I was gonna send you this, and we could
you can send them. Oh, great, even better. That's even better. Yeah, if you can send them all, perfect. And I will make sure that they're then underneath the description. All right, this is number 2, right? Still.
This is number 3. We're on.
What is number 3? Is that the Power Query one, or moving now to
number 3 is Power Query M. Yep.
Okay, that's number 3. All right, perfect. So try these challenges and practice for yourself. All right. So number 4, I see, is then the DAX functions.
So number 4 is the DAX functions, and this is
Cool.
learn the DAX functions that matter most. And there's a number of aspects to this, but one of the things that I see is people kind of jump in and try to learn everything in DAX. And what I found is in analyzing my own use of DAX, and I read a lot of DAX, in terms of, for my own work, and then also for the writing I do on LinkedIn. The DAX is one of the most popular topics. I post a lot about DAX. And as I went back and analyzed my own DAX, what I found is I was using less than 20% of the functions on a regular basis, well less than 20%. And so what I did is Gustav Dudek and I put together a report, and I'll put the link up there, but this is a live report, and basically what it does is, at the time, I said, okay, let me survey 6 top experts in DAX, and so I did that, and I kind of pulled that with my own views, and there was a lot of correspondence in terms of saying, okay, if you look at the top 20% of functions, what are those functions that everybody should know? And this report goes through, and you can basically, click on the 20, the slicer for the 20%, see what the 20% are, see how much correspondence there was. And let me
share that link, Brian. Let me share that link. I think you see it now in the screen. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the report in the Bitly. Yeah?
Yep. And
so take us through it. What do we see here?
So let me see if I can get that up on screen in a way that I can see. Okay.
Yeah, I shared my screen, but yeah.
Pardon?
Oh, you also shared it now? I'll add your screen then.
I've got it up on my shared screen, if that's
cool.
all right.
Yeah, okay. I shared your screen again. Perfect.
Oh, okay. So basically what this is here's the top 20%. And then what we've got is the functions grouped by type. And so so here we've got oh, sorry, just
and how did you derive this top 20% then? What is it based on?
Yeah, so what this was a survey I did of 6 top DAX experts.
All right.
And pooled their rankings, and so then looked at which ones corresponded to to everybody, and then it cumulatively went down to 5 of the 6, 4 of the 6, half the 6.
Yeah.
And then so you get the cutoff in terms of that 20%, and then I've also got the you can switch over and look at the the bottom 80%, and this really for me, this was a huge help in terms of focusing my so here we've got what I've also got here is these are by the SQL BI DAX guide categories. So if you look here, you click on logical functions, and it'll filter down to the logical function. You can see which of the logical ones made the list and which ones didn't. Table manipulation. That
it's nice that switch is 100%, and if is one of the experts said that if is not in the top 20.
And I think
I agree.
You can use
do you?
as if.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I switched through everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that as well. So you can kind of click through here, and you can see. So for example, time intelligence, only one time intelligence function made the list.
Oh, which one is that?
Data.
Data add. Oh.
And that one didn't get unanimous vote. So this is really, for me, this is a really great way to click through and explore and see where you're going to focus your effort. Because if you really focus on this 20% and just kind of use the bottom 80% as an as needed, I think for example, if you're doing financial analysis, there are going to be ones that are not in the top 20% that are going to be relevant. If you're doing, linear regression, the DAX linear regression function is helpful, but in general, those are going to be pretty specialized use.
That one is relatively new, right? The linear regression one.
Yeah, the line STX.
Yeah. So now this is a very nice link. So also that link we will share, and then you can see for yourself which ones you use or not. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Brian, I was wondering, did you also find DAX functions that were supposed to be, well, let's say very important, you didn't use yet? Did it change your own DAX behavior, basically?
It did, in the sense that there were functions that I mean, I'm going to talk a lot about in the next topic, time intelligence, that I don't use any of the time intelligence functions. And the interesting thing is that I think for a while that was viewed as kind of a pretty fringe view of things. And I had some trouble convincing
the nerd method.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, that SQL BI, and I'll jump down here. SQL BI came out last week with a great article. Their stuff is always wonderful, and really delves in great detail. And they talk about optimizing time intelligence. And the interesting thing is, they said by avoiding time intelligence, you can force DAX to produce more optimized queries. And time intelligence calculations often result in complex queries, and it's better to avoid the complexity by using simple DAX. And that is the heart of the offset method that myself and Melissa DeCorte and a number of other folks have been really advocating for a long time, as just a great way. I didn't do it as a way to optimize from a speed standpoint. I did it as a way to just make it much, much simpler, And the thing I love about offsets is that instead of learning, 37 separate time intelligence functions, some of them that include the endpoint, some of them that don't, some of them that are really kind of black boxes that don't operate in the way you think they will. Instead, the offset approach, I've got this stop using janky black box DAX functions. That link, if you go into it, that's a carousel that I did, and it's got a bunch of sources, but it's also got a bunch of examples in there. And also in this first link was a presentation I did where I just walked through kind of example after example, where it just shows using just simple filter conditions and variables that you can do everything time intelligence can do faster, easier, and more transparently.
I have a question from Jacob, just to double check. You mean offset from a date table or the DAX measure that uses offset?
That's a great question, and the answer is it's offset from the date table. That the DAX offset function is related in a general way in terms of kind of moving forward and backward by a set number of steps. But what we're really talking about here is date table offsets. So, basically where the current period is always 0, the next period is 1, the next period back is -1, and it always works the same way. So, the thing about offsets that I love is once you learn the approach once, it works the same way, whether you're talking about weeks, days, years, quarters, semesters, trimesters, 4-4-5 calendar, I see Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a reference for one of the date tables.
Yeah. Melissa DeCorte's date table for me is the gold standard, and it's
right.
I've got the link in that carousel. I've got the link to it, and
cool.
Yeah, highly recommend. And the other thing though is if you're,
we always use it also in our basic one training even already. That we say we have a template file with a date table in it, and indeed also with columns then with the offsets indeed. Right away from the start, luckily, you have that checked. we use that indeed as the basic date table indeed. Yeah.
And I do the same. And the interesting thing is that some people have said, well, what do you do if you have to use an organizational date table and the date table doesn't allow for offsets? And the answer is you can create them quite easily in a variable, just on the fly. And Greg Deckler has done some really great work in terms of showing that performance of those is still really quite good, and that even on quite large queries, you can build those on the fly in variables and have it perform perfectly acceptably even on a large data set.
Cool. IBCS. We have had some episodes about the IBCS also, mostly because then custom visuals use them. The standard visuals of Power BI, they're getting there, it seems, because I see more and more functionalities also in the February release. I mean, I haven't read it fully, to be honest, but that you can put bar charts over each other a little bit, like you do in IBCS. So it seems like it's getting more and more to IBCS options, at least.
Yeah, there's a couple of things happening, and you pointed out one of them that is, I think, super important, which is Miguel Myers and the Power BI Core Visuals team, I think, are very, very supportive of the idea of making it possible to do IBCS style visualization within the native Power BI visuals. And I think that is an absolutely enormous step, for those of us who really think this is a better way to do reporting, particularly for, business and financial reporting. The ability to do it, natively, easily, natively, and there are some great custom visuals. I use Zebra BI, I use InfoRiver. PowerViz has some great stuff, so I'm not knocking the custom visuals at all, but a lot of folks don't have the ability to use custom visuals. And so I think, making sure that the folks that, are limited in that way organizationally, still have the opportunity to apply what I think is the ideal standard for business reporting. And I think that's something that Miguel, I know, is committed to. He's said publicly, and they're really moving well in that direction. I think the other thing that's happening is there's some great work in the community that Andrej, and I'm going to mangle his last name, but Injay Park and Alexander Korn and a number of other folks, Alexandra Godleska, are doing amazing work in terms of SVG graphics and being able to basically transform the native Power BI matrix into IBCS style reports and the native tables. Yeah. And so there is amazingly creative work being done in the community on that front. So I would say if you're interested in implementing that, to really dig in and, connect with those people. They're incredibly generous in terms of sharing, their work and their knowledge. And the other thing is, if you do have the ability to do custom visuals, the DNEB community is another one that has really embraced the IBCS standard.
Yeah, but I think you're also referring here that maybe, because in the Netherlands, I don't think there are too many organizations that apply IBCS. There are a couple of them I know, but I think that is also maybe, it's not only the technology and the technique, but maybe also as from an adoption point of view to get to a standard and maybe push that a little bit more in organizations. it's also worthwhile to see what at all IBCS said, the International Business Communication Standards, stand for.
Yeah,
right?
you know, and you
Or do
raise
you
a great...
see it in the US? Do you see it in the US more as a standard, IBCS?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. It'd be a great question to ask the folks online, because for me, it's very variable. That I see some folks have adopted it very strongly, others not, and it's hard to tell sometimes. Is it for the folks who haven't adopted it? Is it because of they haven't seen it? They've seen it and they don't feel it fits their needs, or they've seen it, they feel it fits their needs, and they haven't been able to implement it, given the fact that the native visuals have really not been geared to that in the past.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of everything. So interesting topic for maybe also another time to cover again, IBCS. Especially now, it seems like you have more and more native capabilities to do that. So interesting.
I'll mention just along those lines, just real quick, that I've been talking a lot with Jürgen Feist, who's the co-founder of the IBCS Institute and the co-author of the standards. And I recently did his certification class. And following the class, we talked a lot about, kind of ways to promote the standard and make it more accessible. And so we've got some interesting, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we've got some interesting stuff that we've been talking about that I think we'll be talking more about down the road.
Great. Do you recognize, Stephen, this 6, or do you have another thing that should be on the list?
I like the 6, and I'd say if I need to pick a favorite, it would be Roche's Maxim, because if you apply that to the Maxim, you don't need to do anything in Power BI anymore, because everything is in the source where it should be.
Only visualize.
But pretty much every other day, I need to, or I relate to that topic and explain we should do things differently because Roche's Maxim and such. That would be my favorite.
Yeah. Now, we asked also the public, so let's go to the results of our little questionnaire that we did. So first of all, we asked, what is your largest challenge? Now, I see indeed a couple of time ducks, but I also see finding the right visual, management buy-in, storytelling. So visualization also seems to be something that people find difficult to master, maybe. Maybe can create simple graphs, but really to master. Okay, so that's interesting. We also asked you what your Super 6, what your superpower is. Visualization, still looking. Implement Star Schema, Power Query and Dutch. So we covered that. Cool. And let's see, we also asked you how often do you watch? Now, a couple of people. Oh, sometimes. Now, great. Great having you. Thank you for filling that in. Now we're already out of time. So fast, actually. And one question to close it off, Brian. So we talked in the beginning a little bit about visual calculations, and there's a lot on the timelines now. We talked about that. Would it be number 7 for you? Will there be a new list with? Will it be the 7th, or are you not sure yet?
I mean, it's really interesting. I am fascinated by them, and I've been posting a lot about it. I've been experimenting a lot. I think there's tremendous promise in that. The question is going to be, I think right now it's very much a preview feature in the truest sense of the word. That I think I've talked to Jay about it, and I think he's not even sure ultimately what it's going to become. In terms of he's talked about, just last week he talked about the number of different options they have for promoting a visual calculation to a measure that would be reusable. And I think they're looking at what the best of those alternatives is going to be. And so I think what visual calculations becomes is quite different than what it is today. I think it's very promising. I think you can do things in one line of visual calculation DAX that would take 20 lines of fairly complex DAX to do otherwise. And I think that is a huge step forward. But I do think, the documentation, the transparency, some folks have said you're trading, in some sense, you're just trading one set of problems for another. I think there's promise in that. But I think, kind of how the balance shakes out remains to be seen. But I could definitely see them becoming, a Super 7.
Yeah. We'll see in the next month.
It's about as far away from the data source as you can be. So I'm interested in seeing how it will evolve in that matter.
That's true. Yeah.
I like your switch here to Roche's Maxim, though, Stephen. I believe strongly in that.
Yeah. We'll definitely we'll see more of that in the next months, and I think it's always worthwhile to also share about it on LinkedIn what your opinion is about it, because Microsoft is looking at it, and Jeroen Teert, that you mentioned, Jay, as you call him, he's also actively looking into that. He's reacting to everything, it seems. Don't know where he finds the time, but and he's coming to the Netherlands also for the Power BI User Day. So if you if you're living in the Netherlands and hey, you have some time free on March 8 and 9, yeah, for sure he's present there, so you can directly hear from the senior program manager on this topic. Can hear directly from him and ask him questions and give him feedback, because he can use that for the next iteration. So how cool is that? It's very approachable.
I love the way he's been out in the community, and the way Miguel Myers has been out there.
Especially
Douglas, and I feel like
that I haven't seen that in other organizations, because I've worked at IBM and other large corporations, but never you could reach from the community, the people that are leading those developments. That's interesting.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it is. Brian, thank you so much for joining this episode. It was very interesting, and if you can share the links, that would be great. I will make sure that they'll add it to the description on YouTube. And and the 7th indeed. Yeah, Lonneke is from the organization of the User Day. Good that you give some additional. Yeah, on March 7th, there is indeed a full visual calculation training in the pre-conference. Okay.
Oh, great.
Great. The first training ever. Yeah. Now,
well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Time flew by in an instant.
Yeah, it goes fast always. Yeah. So next week I am together with Lonneke hosting the next episode of our Design Thursday. In Dutch it sounds better, Design Donderdag. But we'll be talking about design. So if you have any suggestions or questions, or maybe you want to share something yourself about visualization, feel free to contact me or Lonneke, because we're looking still for some interesting topics, and maybe we're going to talk about visual calculations. It's visual. So yeah, thank you for watching, Winston, and thank you everyone for interacting. And see you next week. And Brian, we'll follow you. Keep following you on LinkedIn.
Thanks. Thanks.
All right. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.